Welcome to Dog and Duck's Whiskey and Bourbon Training. We're here not just to grow our knowledge, we're building something bigger. Dog and Duck is becoming a true bourbon destination. Stick around until the very end to hear all about our private barrel selection program, including the story of our very first exclusive barrel pick. Let's start with the basics. Whiskey is a distilled alcoholic beverage made from fermented grain mash, aged in wooden barrels, and typically enjoyed neat, on the rocks, or in cocktails. It's a diverse spirit, with many types, each defined by its grain, aging process, and where it's made. Remember, all bourbon is whiskey, but not all whiskey is bourbon. Up next, we'll walk through the main types of whiskey, just the essentials you need to know. Let's start with bourbon, America's native spirit. Bourbon must be made in the United States, from a mash that's at least 51% corn, and aged in new American white oak barrels. It must be aged for a minimum of 2 years, though most are aged longer. Known for its sweetness, smokiness, and caramel notes, bourbon is full-bodied and approachable, often with hints of vanilla and spice. Popular bourbons you'll find at Dog and Duck include Woodford Reserve, Russell's Reserve 10-year, Elijah Craig, Eagle Rare, Heaven Hill 7-year, Angel's Envy, Four Roses, Blanton's, and Buffalo Trace. Rye whiskey brings the spice. To be labeled rye, it must be made from at least 51% rye grain and aged for at least 2 years. Rye has a spicy, fruity, and herbal profile, often with a bold, dry finish. It's a go-to in classic cocktails like the Manhattan. Some of our top rye selections include Elijah Craig Rye, Russell's Reserve Rye, and Michter's Rye. Up next, we have Tennessee whiskey, which is technically a bourbon because it is made from at least 51% corn, but with one key difference. It's made in Tennessee and must be charcoal filtered before aging. This extra step, called the Lincoln County process, gives it a smoother, mellower flavor with a touch of sweetness. The most famous example, Jack Daniel's, a true Tennessee icon. Irish whiskey is known for being light, floral, and super smooth. It's typically made from both malted and unmalted barley and must be aged at least 3 years in wooden casks. Expect notes of honey, fruit, and a soft finish. Perfect for sipping or mixing. Popular Irish whiskies include Jameson and Proper 12. Scotch whiskey must be made in Scotland using Scottish water and aged at least 3 years in oak. There are many styles, but in general, Scotch can be smoky, peaty, fruity, or malty, depending on the region and blend. Single malt Scotch is made from 100% malted barley at one distillery. Blended Scotch combines single malts and grain whiskies for a smoother, often more affordable pour. Popular Scotch brands include Glenlivet, Dewar's, and Johnnie Walker. Canadian whiskey, on the other hand, is usually lighter and smoother, often made with a high corn content. It's typically blended and easy drinking, like Crown Royal. While there are many styles of whiskey, today we're specifically focusing on bourbon. Bourbon is a distinctly American whiskey, and to earn the name, it has to follow a few important rules. It must be made in the United States. The mash bill must contain at least 51% corn. It must be aged in new, charred American white oak barrels. It can be distilled to no more than 160 proof and bottled at 80 proof or higher. No added flavors or colors are allowed. These rules create the bold, sweet, and smoky flavors that bourbon lovers crave, and that our guests come to Dog and Duck to experience. Let's look at some bourbon naming terms. A bourbon bottle can either be a single barrel, meaning all of the bourbon in that bottle came from one single barrel, or a small batch, meaning the bottle contains bourbon from several different barrels to ensure consistency of flavor. The abbreviation for single barrel is capital S, lowercase I, capital B. Single barrels are generally more unique in flavor. The abbreviation for small batch is capital S, capital B. Small batches are generally more consistent in flavor. Additionally, a bottle can be barrel-proof, or have the alcohol content adjusted with water. This can happen for either a single barrel or small batch. For example, you could have a single barrel, barrel-proof bourbon, or a small batch, barrel-proof bourbon, like Elijah Craig barrel-proof. Most barrel-proof bourbons are 110 proof or higher. Let's talk about bottled in bond. Back in the late 1800s, not all whiskey was created equal. In fact, a lot of it wasn't even whiskey. Dishonest producers would cut corners by adding caramel coloring, tobacco spit, turpentine, or even acid to mimic the look and flavor of aged spirits. This fake whiskey made people sick, and there was no regulation to stop it. So in 1897, the federal government stepped in with the Bottled-in-Bond Act, America's first food safety law, even before the FDA existed. It was designed to protect consumers and support distillers who were doing things the right way. Think of it like a government seal of approval. To be labeled bottled in bond, a bourbon must meet these strict requirements. It must be the product of one distiller, at one distillery, in one distilling season. It must be aged for at least 4 years in federally supervised warehouses. It must be bottled at exactly 100 proof, or 50% alcohol by volume. It must contain nothing added, no blending, flavors, or coloring. Where bourbon gets its flavor. Think of it this way. The mash is the base of the flavor, and the barrel is the finish. Different grains in the mash bring unique characteristics to the bourbon, while the time in the barrel adds depth and richness. In fact, 50 to 60% of the flavor comes from the time spent in the barrel. The mash, flavor from the grain. All bourbon mash bills must be at least 51% corn. Corn brings sweetness. Caramel, honey, sugar cookie, notes of creamed corn or buttered popcorn, sometimes a touch of light fruit like apple or pear. Additional grains are added to adjust the flavor, typically rye or wheat. Rye is the spicy kick. Bold peppery spice, black or white pepper, baking spice, cinnamon, clove, mint, dry herbal flavors, and adds a zing to the palate. Wheat brings smooth and soft, with soft sweetness like honey, vanilla, toffee, creamy texture, and round mouthfeel. Mellow and approachable, examples include Weller, Pappy Van Winkle, and Maker's Mark. Barley is small but mighty, adds enzymes for fermentation and light flavor, tastes like cereal grains, toast, or biscuit. In darker roasts may taste chocolate or coffee notes. Subtle nuttiness. The barrel, where the magic happens. All bourbon must age in new American white oak barrels that are typically charred or toasted. Here's what the barrel brings. Vanilla, from lignin breaking down into vanillin. Caramel and toffee flavors from caramelized wood sugars. Smokiness, which can be stronger with deeper char levels. And spice like cinnamon, clove, and nutmeg. Bourbon flavor profiles. There are lots of descriptive words used to describe bourbon flavors. Here are some general categories to get you started. Use the reference notes and check out the flavor wheel to explore even more. Bourbon Tasting Wheel. This tasting wheel is a great tool for starting conversations about bourbon, whether it's before, during, or after the pour. It gives guests a fun and engaging way to identify different flavor notes, from the sweetness of corn to the spice of rye, or even the smoky caramel notes from the barrel. Encourage them to explore the wheel and describe what they're tasting. It makes the experience more interactive and memorable, and keeps them coming back to try more. Selling bourbon like a boss. Let's talk about how to sell bourbon in a way that connects with guests and creates excitement. Step 1. Tell the story first, not the proof. When selling bourbon, start with the story, not just the stats. People connect with bourbon not only for the flavor, but for the feeling it gives them. That feeling often begins with a great origin story. For example, Blanton's was the first ever single-barrel bourbon. Weller shares the same wheated mash bill as the legendary Pappy Van Winkle. These kinds of stories create emotional connections and curiosity, and that sells better than tasting notes alone. Don't forget exclusivity. We might not always have Blanton's on the shelf, but that's what makes it exciting. Scarcity creates buzz. Encourage guests to come back to catch rare bottles while they can. Your goal? Learn 3 bottle stories really well. Use the Bourbon by Story reference sheet and check the new drink menu to see what's currently available at your location, using the Bourbon Stories reference page. This reference page is a quick guide to help you talk about each bourbon with confidence. You'll find interesting brand facts, a few key tasting notes, a focused selling tip for each bottle. Keep in mind, not every bourbon we carry is included yet, but we're continuing to build and expand the list. Remember, the goal is to get comfortable telling the story behind a pour, so you can create a more memorable experience for the guest. Step 2, meet them where they are. Start by asking a simple question. Do you usually like sweet and smooth or spicier with a kick? This helps you guide the guest toward a pour they'll enjoy. If they say sweet or smooth, recommend options like Buffalo Trace, Angel's Envy, or Blanton's. If they prefer spicy and robust, go with something like Wild Turkey 101, Elijah Craig Barrel Proof, or Michter's Rye. If they're a Scotch drinker, pivot to something familiar like Glenlivet 12 or Glenfiddich. Use the Bourbon by Flavor Profile reference sheet to help you recommend pours with confidence. Flavor Profile Reference Page. This page gives you basic tasting note categories to help you understand and talk about what's in the glass. Keep in mind, a bourbon might fall into more than one category. Here's a quick reminder of the trends. Wheated bourbons tend to be softer and sweeter. Bourbons with rye added bring spice and herbal notes. Barrel-proof bourbons are usually strong, bold, and intense. Use this guide to help you suggest pours based on a guest's preferences or describe what they're tasting during a pour. Step 3. Use the 3-note rule. When describing bourbon to a guest, stick to just 3 key tasting notes. Too much information can overwhelm or confuse. Keep it simple and memorable. For example, Elijah Craig Private Barrel Dog and Duck A125 has notes of vanilla, caramel, and brown sugar with a lingering butterscotch candy finish. Use this approach to make tasting notes sound approachable, not intimidating. Don't forget to reference the Bourbons by Story sheet or past Whiskey Wednesday notes. These are great for quick, effective ways to describe each bottle. Step 4. Use upsell anchors. Price is all about perspective. How you frame it makes all the difference. Try using comparisons to guide the guest towards something more special or exclusive. You can go with Buffalo Trace for $8. It's a great value, but if you want something truly limited, I've got Blanton's for $15. Or, want something richer or stronger? This one's barrel-proof at $15, bold and packed with flavor. The goal is to give your guests context, not just the price, but why it's worth it. Step 5. Know your stars. Every bar has a few MVPs. Be sure to know their strengths. For example, Elijah Craig Barrel Proof and the Dog and Duck Private Selection A125, Blanton's Gold and Blanton's Straight from the Barrel, Eagle Rare, and Henry McKenna 10-year. If these are in your restaurant, they're easy sells. Step 6. Plant the seed. Even if they don't order it today, your words can spark curiosity for tomorrow. It's all about planting the seed with a little excitement and confidence. Honestly, if you're feeling adventurous, this is one of my favorite bottles. You won't regret it. That kind of personal touch stays with guests. They'll remember how you made it sound and how you made them feel. And the next time they come in, they just might be ready to try it. Serving styles. Choose your experience. There's more than one way to enjoy bourbon, and each style reveals something different in the pour. Neat is served straight from the bottle. No ice, no water. This is the purest expression of the bourbon. You'll experience the full flavor profile just as the distiller intended. Warmth, proof, bold spice, and a lingering finish. On the rocks is served over ice, usually 1 to 2 large cubes or a single sphere. The chill takes the edge off the alcohol and slowly dilutes the bourbon, opening up softer, sweeter, and smoother notes over time. With water means a splash or a few drops of still water, especially useful for higher proof pours. Water helps break surface tension and unlocks hidden aromas and subtle flavors. And lastly, in a cocktail, from a classic old-fashioned to a modern bourbon smash, mixing bourbon adds depth and richness to cocktails while letting the spirit shine through. Speaking of cocktails, introducing the special Dog and Duck cocktail, the Duck Blind. It's a milk-clarified Manhattan sour made with Elijah Craig, Private Selection, Single Barrel, D&D A125 Bourbon, Orgeat, lemon juice, and 10-year port wine. These cocktails are extra cool because milk is used to filter out impurities and color from additives, leaving a clearish cocktail that's silky and creamy, without being milky. What? That's crazy. This is an easy way to start bourbon conversations at your tables. Everyone will want to know more about it. One more pro tip. Orgeat is pronounced Orgeat. Keep in mind that due to the lengthy prep process, only our private label bourbon can be used. Classic bourbon cocktails. Just a reminder, we still have the classic old-fashioned Manhattan and now a Boulevardier. Each is marketed with the Elijah Craig Private Barrel, but can be substituted with the guest's choice of bourbon for an upcharge. Introducing the Barrel Program. Here at Dog and Duck, we believe great bourbon brings people together. That's why we're launching the D&D Signature Bourbon, a thoughtfully curated barrel program that celebrates craftsmanship, character, and community. This program is our promise to seek out truly exceptional barrels, each chosen by our team for its unique flavor profile, rare characteristics, and rich story. It's more than bourbon. It's about creating an experience where every pour is worth savoring. We're kicking things off with something special. Our Elijah Craig Single Barrel Dog and Duck A125. This bold, smooth bourbon is exclusive to Dog and Duck and offers a one-of-a-kind flavor that can't be replicated, unlike the Elijah Craig small batch you'll find on shelves. Tasting notes: nose, vanilla, tobacco, and leather, with a crisp note of Granny Smith apple. Taste: vanilla, caramel, and brown sugar, layered with dried apricot, rose hips, and pecan praline. Finish: long, smooth caramel butterscotch with a hint of sour candy on the edges. Color: deep mahogany, like a rich Irish red lager. A couple more fun facts are: Single Barrel A125 was selected from the Bernheim Rickhouses in Louisville. Located on the same campus as Heaven Hill's historic Bernheim Distillery, these are the only 7 rickhouses made from brick out of their 70-plus rickhouses. Bernheim is the largest single-site bourbon distillery in the U.S. Together, these 7 rickhouses hold 415,187 barrels. D&D Single Barrel aged 9 years on the 5th floor of Warehouse 11, a location considered by many to be the sweet spot. Thank you for watching this training. Please use the following guides to support your bourbon knowledge journey. This video: Bourbons by Story Reference Sheet, Bourbons by Flavor Profile Reference Sheet, Whiskey Roleplay Questions Reference Sheet, Bourbon Family Tree Diagram, Tablet Tablet for Pricing. Your managers and bartenders, and your bourbon boss, Brandon Maddox. I hope everyone has a super amazing rest of your day.